Recording in progress.
Girl, guys, so I make selfie books for myself, so you'll always see me do. Nobody will partake in.
Tammy,
We'll sing tonight.
we good?
We are ready.
Let's rock and roll.
All right.
Nice. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the July 11th, 2022 regularly scheduled work session. Tonight, there are 6 items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card, and if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, You must fill out an affidavit that you have the authority of said organization. Please remember that this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of the item. Once the item is called, no other public comment cards will be accepted. Will the city clerk please sound agenda item A?
Thank you, Mayor. That agenda item is recognition of the BZA board member, Todd Chernick. Mayor?
Thank you. Well, Todd, we put you number 1 on the list. I was thinking we were going to move you all the way down to the bottom, but got you here. So February 15th, 2007, Todd Chernick was appointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Todd, I don't think you want to know where I was in 2007, but for the last 15 years, Todd has worked extremely hard for this city and has protected the citizens and has done an amazing job on the Board of Zoning Appeals. And not only on the Board of Zoning Appeals, our last comprehensive plan was pretty much done by Todd and staff and really took that. And for the next 10, 20 years, this city, you really have left a mark on this city. So I will tell you on behalf of me, I know when we first met, I was on the planning commission, and we formed a nice bond and relationship because I think we had the same love and feel for this city, and it really shows. And I really appreciate everything that you've done. So with that said, I'll probably toss it around. If any council members or staff would like to say anything? Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. So ordinarily, staff wouldn't get involved in this process, publicly thanking one of the members of our boards or commissions. But Todd, as you know, is not an ordinary guy, and we didn't have an ordinary relationship. Working through some things over the years, and then ultimately during the comp plan, Todd really emerged as a great transformational leader. He quickly got everybody to coalesce around a set of goals and objectives for that comprehensive plan, and just inspired everybody every day to deliver an outstanding product. And he is a big reason why we have delivered, in my opinion, the best comprehensive plan that we have to date. So Todd, on behalf of staff, thank you very much for being the type of leader you are and the friend you've become. And when you get your gift from council, you get a little gift from staff as well. So thank you.
Paul?
It's obviously bittersweet for us, Todd, to send you on into your next chapter, and it's with a lot of sorrow in my heart that I'll miss you here, but I celebrate where you're going next with your new life's chapter. There are very few people who have made the kind of contribution you have made to Milton. Your selfless service for the past 15 years, the leadership example that you set for others, the fact that you could bring organization out of chaos. You were the chair of a quasi-judicial board, the only other one that exists in the city, and you led that with charm, character, professionalism, and just a remarkable leadership to have navigated some of the most difficult tasks that come before any of our boards and councils, because the Board of Zoning Appeals is one that is kind of the last straw for some folks. And yet you navigated that with all the professionalism that sets a remarkable example for all of us to look up to for many years to come. So it's a great pleasure that I wish you all the best for what we'll bring next to hopefully amazing days ahead for you and your family. Carol?
Todd, when I got on the board, on the council several years ago, I asked the staff, well, they were talking about the appointees I needed to have for the different committees, et cetera. And I said, okay, well, what's the prototype of a great committee leader? And they all said Todd Chernick. And so I remembered that. Now, I was lucky in that I had good folks, but I also asked my folks as I was introducing myself to them, how do you get along with Todd Chernick? And you have certainly been that kind of leader, and it's been a pleasure to hear your name used so many times of Ask Todd, and all these initiatives. So congratulations to you, and a deep and heartfelt thank you.
Tammy, do we have any public comment?
We do, Mayor. I'd like to invite Miss Laura Bentley to the podium, please.
Hi, Laura Bentley, 2500 Bethlehem Church Road. Mayor, council, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to recognize Todd Chernick. Todd is not only a neighbor and a community advocate, he is a friend of mine, and I also consider him a coach. Todd, throughout the years as a citizen and also a council member, helped me with some really tough decisions, and I will always remember that. I also had the privilege to sit through the Pikes Nursery BZA variance approval, which I'm pretty sure there were 13, maybe, with 25 conditions. And if you are really bored, as I do, and go back and watch those meetings to learn, it was pure genius. I mean, Todd went through every issue and conditioned it, and when those citizens left, they were happy, and they were well represented by Todd Chernick. The last thing I'd like to say about Todd and his beautiful wife is I had the privilege to have Sarah, their daughter, come down to the farm and work and be around horses for some service hours. And I found myself while she was there saying, what kind of parents raise a child this perfect? I mean, she scrubbed water troughs. She had a work ethic that was unbelievable. And so as a parent, Todd, I think one of the best compliments is how our children behave and act. And he has so much to be proud of. Sarah's now off at West Point doing her training. So congratulations on that. And I just can't say enough about Todd. Obviously, he did wonderful things with our comp plan. And thank you for having him here tonight to recognize him. He's extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess, Todd, we're going to come give you some gifts, and we'll take a picture, and then you're going to take your RV and you're going to head north, I guess. Is that right? There you go. This council can join me down.
I don't like this public stuff. I mean, I sit on the dais, but I just like getting there. Where do I stand?
Ready? Let's see. 1, 2, 3.
How do I check this out? Listen, these are the real heroes. That, and I mean that. We know that. This the group that has been teams to make us do what we do. Get enough right. Boss friend.
There we go. Actually, here, get council between people's heads. Let's see. Or you can get up there. You know what? It'll work. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Good. Great.
Thank you. Again, really.
Okay. Will the city clerk sound agenda item B, please?
Mayor, that item is discussion of the Mayfield District as it relates to AG1. And I would like to invite Mr. Bob Buscemi, our Community Development Director.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. This is for the AG1.
I'm sorry, it's just discussion of Mayfield District.
The
My
Mayfield
apologies,
District.
yes.
Yes, that's what I thought it was. Okay. I'd like to invite Charlie Roberts up to make a short presentation. Huh? Yeah, there you
All the hugging, cheering.
You okay? Oh, okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Charlie Roberts. I live at 13645 Freemanville Road, and I'm chairman of the Design Review Board. You have before you, I hope, in your packet, a map outlines the proposed limits of the district at Mayfield. And I say proposed. Excuse me, my hay fever is killing me. I've worked in the yard too long this morning. Where many of the existing buildings are historical and contributing structures for this proposed character area and proposed overlay district. Also included is a map and history that was done by the Milton Historical Society and the structures that are contributing to this area. And Jeff is here this evening. Jeff, stand up. If you have any questions on the research and the facts presented to you in the package by the Historical Society. You also have pictures of each one of the contributing structures and the buildings that make this area unique and special. The district at Mayfield is a unique and historical place. I believe it's irreplaceable at a time that Milton's booming and buildings are being built new, large, and not really in the character of Milton. With the overlay and design standards, we can protect and enhance the district at Mayfield with more walkable retail, office, and housing. The desired end result is a district with unique character, historical structures, along with new construction that fits architecturally and reminds future generations of Milton's history and past, which I believe is the reason I first got involved in this. Is it is unique. It is ground zero for the history of Milton County, 150 years ago. And this little area, happily enough, is still there. And it's very important to our future and future generations. So I wish you would review the work. We have several property owners here tonight, so I'm going to cut my presentation short, allowing them to speak and voice their opinions. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about the package that we've brought to you.
Charlie,
Thank you.
we didn't have the map.
Yeah, we're going to put the map so everyone can kind of see.
Okay.
If you would take a minute and just show everybody the boundary areas again, Charlie.
Can we zoom closer in because you can't see it all on that?
Zoom out.
Come out.
Zoom out, yes, I'm sorry. A little further if you can. The area is primarily bounded by Charlotte Drive and the library, Mayfield to the corner where Mayfield becomes Crabapple, Mid-Broadwell, and Broadwell Road. It's a very tight district. We could have put more in, proposed more in the district, but we felt to keep it very tight and concise where these historic structures were and these historic roads. Mayfield, Broadwell, Rucker were all the postal routes 100 years ago. And they were the main roads from Sandy Springs, Roswell, and Alpharetta over to what was then town center for Milton. Steve, this was in their packet. So can we get everybody this map?
They have it.
Oh, they
They
do?
just don't have it in front of them.
Okay. So that's our map, and we're open to any thoughts about that from you over the next few weeks as you evaluate our proposal, and just open to hearing your discussion and that of the homeowners and landowners in the proposed district.
Okay. Before we have questions, is there any public comment?
Yes, Mayor, we have public comment.
Okay.
I'd like to first invite Dana Zaworski to the podium, please.
Hey, Dana.
I will invite John Zaworski.
Hey, how are y'all? Sorry, that was news to me. My name is John Zaworski. I live at 610 Concrete Court. My stepfather owns a couple properties. I guess that map's away, but it was 2 properties on Mid-Broadwell. Yeah, he's 21 and 22 there on the map. We've had the pleasure of meeting with Charlie before to talk about the district, and my stepdad, I'll speak on behalf of him, is in favor of the district and kind of the general idea of, you know, wrapping your arms around this kind of last undeveloped, you know, little portion of Milton, and just kind of having a hand on what it becomes, and just so it's not something that, in all this demand and excitement, just kind of happens without, you know, a little bit of thought and planning. You know, our properties are his properties there. And, you know, nothing's planned for the immediate future, so we're on board to kind of listen to Charlie and you guys and everyone else in the area to figure out what the best plan is moving forward to, you know, to make it the best it can be. We're residents, and Larry's a longtime landowner there. He's owned the property for 40 years, something like that. It was his personal residence for 15, so he's got a lot of connection to the area and the property, so we're excited to participate and be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Dana, do you want to speak? Mayor, I'd like to invite Jodelle Davenport to the podium, please. Okay, thank you. And last, I'd like to invite Brad Flack. And Ann Flack, yes.
Hi, we're Anna Brad Flack, and we live at 820 Mid-Broadwell Road. We also own 800 Mid-Broadwell, so I think it's 12 and 13 on the map. And we are in support of the district.
So my family moved to Mid-Broadwell Road in 1976. My parents still live right down the street, and our kids make 4 generations of our family on Mid-Broadwell Road. And so thinking about this, you know, history can sneak up on you. And Crabapple has a lot of history, and a lot of it is included in this district. So we're 100% in favor of the district. And we look forward to working with everybody involved to come up with a plan that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for this item.
Thank you. I know I have a couple questions, but I want to open up the council if they have any questions. Hey, Bob, for just for the record, can you tell us, go through what the current zoning is here? This is form-based code. And then what are the next steps after this? I know we have a council meeting, I think, coming up on the 25th. We're going to vote on it. And then what's the timeline?
Okay, well, it is in the form-based code. It's in the, that would be the southeast quadrant. So we divided Crabapple up into 4 quadrants, and that's really the last quadrant. The next steps on the 25th would be just really to extend the moratorium until December. That would give us staff enough time to work with the group to, you know, potentially hire a consultant to go out and research this in greater depth and see what we need to do to put this together. We'd have to go through a whole public process, right? Public process, just like you would if you wanted to recommend any changes to the zoning. But first, I think it'd be great to, you know, put that plan together, research it in greater depth, and figure out what it is that everybody's looking for, and get more feedback from council on it, saying, you know, this is what we're thinking, show you all what it is, and give everybody more of a history of what we've done. There is somewhat of a process that goes through it. That's why the moratorium would be extended for 6 months.
Thank you. Carol?
First, I want to thank the Roberts. Charlie, you have certainly put your career to work on behalf of the city with this very interesting idea. And second, I'd like to thank the property owners who are here for being open-minded and putting Milton's interest first, because that's certainly what we're elected to do. But hopefully we can still find some sort of symbiotic solution at the end of this. I do have a couple questions. When you look at the map, can we put the map back up? Thank you. So as you look at Mid-Broadwell and you look at the properties that are in yellow on the outskirts there were a lot of treed areas that I'm wondering if we have the opportunity, can we do anything with green space money and incorporate that and actually make this a character district that incorporates green space, which would, in my opinion, really hit it out of the park?
That's entirely up to council. If you want to use green space funds for there, though I would anticipate as well that any development over there would include some green space requirements.
Okay. So to be looked at, Charlie, and put that on your list of many things to check off. But I think we're in a really good place. The notifications are out. Great idea. See what happens.
Oh, yep. I just want to reiterate what Carol said. Thank you, Charlie and Sarah. You did a lot of work here. Thank you to Bob and staff for putting this together. I know it was short notice, so we appreciate it. And I guess we'll vote on this on the 25th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, I appreciate the work that's gone into this and also the opportunity to actually see how we can preserve this. Also thank the Milton Historical Society for your input and actually trying to give us a little history of the buildings that are there, so we've got an idea of what are we trying to preserve, what's the character that we're working with. I know Charlie has worked with you and understands what's there, but I think this is exciting. We've talked about this area in the past. I'm glad to hear that we actually have support of the landowners to take a look at this.
Mayor, just to be clear, on the 25th, you'll be voting on extending the moratorium.
Right.
It'll be several months before this district is back before you.
Thank you. Paul?
Just like to also thank Charlie and Sarah and all the others who worked on that, the landowners in particular who came this evening to speak. We appreciate your early embracing of this, but also take a minute and point out that although we've talked about it having some historic value, it's also about preserving a look and feel for what it was there. There may not be quite as many historic events or people or things that have been there, but it certainly is important, I believe, to preserve the character of what we all moved to, which is that little slice of heaven that's still there. And anything we can do to preserve that and enhance it from a retail and walkability and the kinds of things that we know there's a lot of pressure for in Milton. I think we can have the best of all worlds. And Charlie and Sarah have shared a great vision and applaud your efforts to work with the landowners to share your vision and get them to embrace the vision, I guess. So thank you.
Is that it? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Will the city clerk please sound agenda item C?
Mayor, that agenda item is discussion on Crabapple Area Personal Transportation Vehicles, known as PTV, golf cart plan, presented by our Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders, and Mr. Rob Del Ross.
There we are. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to be giving you an update on the PTV plan that we've been working on for the past 6 months in the Crabapple area. Before I get underway, this plan before you tonight would not be possible without our consultant partners. So we've got Rebecca and Richard in the audience. They both did a fantastic job. Sarah and I are very happy with this document. We are giving you a briefing and an update here tonight. Hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be bringing this plan back to you for adoption likely in August. So real quickly, what we're going to be talking about tonight, I just give you and the crowd a little bit of background information on where we are for the city today and recap the local regulations and the state law that allows us to talk about PTVs, i.e. golf carts in the public right-of-way. We're going to show you a route plan and a graphic that our plan produced that we think is a great document to help residents understand what they can do and what they can't do as far as PTV use. One of the recommendations from the plan that the state law allows for is a registration process that we're going to be recommending to you and talk about a little bit about the details there tonight, and then recap the public outreach and the community input that we've done to date. Legally, state law allows for local governments to regulate the use of personal transportation vehicles on public streets. What you did as a body in June of 2020 was take elements of that state law and incorporated it into our city code. What that means is that if I'm a licensed driver and if I own a personal transportation vehicle that meets the state regs, which I'm going to show you in a second, I am legally allowed to drive that golf cart on a public street if the speed limit is 25 miles an hour or below. State law also allows for, next slide I'll show you, there are specific requirements that the PTV actually has to include. Of course, this comes up a lot, it has to be a licensed driver. So no 14-year-olds can't legally drive golf carts on public streets, even though we all know it happens occasionally. The other big point for the PTV plan and kind of the purpose and why we started the study to begin with, over the past several years since the incorporation of the code in 2020, we have had conversations, both with you, with residents internally and staff, and talking about how we make connections across state routes and trying to bridge a logical origin to a logical destination. That might be two subdivisions on one side of the street that are both 25 mile an hour, but there's no 25 mile an hour connection between them. And that gap between the origin and destination may be a state route. It could be two subdivisions wanting to go back and forth. It could be one subdivision going to a school. It could be one subdivision going to a business in a thriving commercial area like Crabapple. So there are some logical places where we're going to want to get crossings approved on state routes. You'll see that in the map here shortly. And in order to have that conversation and get those approved by the state, the first thing they asked for is for us to produce a plan. That's why we're here. This is a brief graphic on what a PTV has to include. I'm not going to hit all of these details. This is laid out very clearly in the state law that we have incorporated. Some of the key recommendations out of this document and based on our public outreach, bullet one, a large public sentiment trying to prioritize development of multi-use paths. You'll see in survey results later in the presentation, many residents who don't currently use PTVs and would want to, some of them aren't comfortable using them on the street and would like a path at least 8 feet wide, preferably 10 feet, still in the right of way, but not in the road, to allow for those PTV two-way traffic for the personal transportation vehicles. Bullet two, we're going to talk about the permitting process in a second. That is very common for other cities. I'm familiar with Ackworth, I believe Woodstock, Roswell, Augusta. Most of the urban cities who are PTV accessible all have permitting processes with a small fee. The state law establishes minimum insurance requirements for PTV use. This is something that we intend on reminding the drivers that come to us for the decal and the registration to make sure that they're aware of the state requirement for this, treating a PTV the same as a motor vehicle. We would like to adopt the plan in August so that we're able to go to GDOT District 7 to have crossings of state routes. And we've also been asked through the public involvement process, another key takeaway from that, we have been asked to look for future development in the Crabapple area to consider the requirement of these multi-use paths and off-street paths. Next graphic, I'm hoping you have a paper copy in front of you because we had some difficulty printing this. The aqua lines you see on the screen turned out green on your hard copy, and it's extremely difficult to see, but I hope the combination of what you see on the screen and what you've been printed makes sense of this map. The key takeaways here, every road in that green color, today, you are legally allowed to use a golf cart on. The red roads are the state routes, and you'll see that there are some locations where you can ride from subdivision to subdivision, but very often you are needing to either get onto the state route for a short section, or you're needing to cross from one side of the state route to the other. So the green and the red are very important. The aqua color that's showing up in green on your print, the aqua color are the recommendations that we and the consultant have used. We are calling them PTV accessible multi-use paths. That's the construction effort that we think is needed to enhance the network out there today, to build those connections from the key origins to the key destinations. You'll see, I'm going to try and get my cursor here on the screen. You'll see aqua on both sides of 372 from School Drive heading down towards the roundabout at Crabapple. You'll see aqua on Mayfield on one side. That's the current sidewalk project that's under design right now. I'm not going to hit all of the aqua. You'll see another section on 372 south here, allowing the subdivision access to the roundabout, which then would give them access to all of Crabapple. You'll also see a connection here giving Waterside access to head east up to Crabapple and then head west over to State Route 140. I'll go through this pretty quickly. These are just some renderings of what those crossings might look like. These are graphics from our plan. The registration process, we want to keep as simple as we possibly can, but yet still comply with the state law. So what many other cities have done is they're asking for a $15 fee for a 5-year license, and they would give you a decal, a sample shown on the bottom left, for you to attach to your PTV. This is a way for us to track and know how popular these are and in what parts of the city they're being registered and being used. This is also a chance for us to remind them of what just because they're asking for the decal doesn't mean they necessarily understand 100% of the city code and 100% of the state law. So we could have a small takeaway, a small handout, a small pamphlet, a brochure that we could produce and remind them when they're getting their decal, this is what the law requires you to do, and you need to be aware of the insurance. You need to be aware that yes, your PTV needs a horn and your PTV needs brake lights and simple things like that not everyone may understand. A very low fee, a 5-year registration that we would track. We would coordinate Public Works, likely with the PD staff. I'm not going to go through the entire community survey. If any of you would like to see this afterwards, Sarah and I can provide this for you. There was 15 questions, 880 responses, which is fantastic. We ran this in April, a couple of months ago. I'm just going to hit 3 questions, kind of get you a flavor of what we heard from the data from the residents. Question 2, we asked how high of a priority should the issue of PTVs in the city of Milton? And we saw if we group the medium and high and highest priority, we're at about 57-58% of the respondees saying that PTVs should be at least a medium priority. Of the 880 responses, question 3, we had 229 of the 880 say that they currently already owned one. In question 4, we asked of the people that don't own one, why don't you? So the most common responses were the lack of paths associated with the PTVs, I'm skimming down here, additional amenities at key destinations like the prevalence of parking or the ability to charge your electric PTV. Also, number 3 on the screen, the ability to drive on low-speed streets, which is currently available, but that was getting towards why can't I drive on something that's, say, 30 or 35 that currently isn't allowed. Next steps, where are we going from tonight? Based on the questions and comments here tonight, Sarah and I are planning on bringing this document for adoption in August. After that, later this year, we'd be working with legal and working with PD on the ordinance changes that need to be done to incorporate the recommendations from this document, and then start talking logistics about the decal and the registration process and to get that underway. That's it for tonight. Open for questions.
Rick?
Yeah, appreciate the presentation. I know we're going to have some questions from like Alpharetta residents that are just south of the roundabout on Crabapple. How does that play into access and PVT registration with Milton?
So my understanding, if we're talking about Mayfield, that kind of area there, or?
Actually off from Crabapple, like Crabapple Chase and some other larger subdivisions, but that come right into that roundabout, have access.
We're planning on having a conversation. Sarah and I know Pete, the Public Works Director in Alpharetta, pretty well, just to understand, is this a topic that has any kind of momentum and any kind of support on their side? My understanding, and Sarah's going to correct me up here if I'm incorrect, I am fairly certain that a couple of years ago, unlike Roswell and unlike Ackworth and a couple of other areas, Alpharetta has taken a stance on golf carts that's opposite from Milton and Roswell, and they do not have the ability to drive on a 25-mile-an-hour public street like we do here. It's not that they even just haven't discussed it. They actually had a discussion and decided this isn't what we want to do for the city.
Paul?
Thanks for the presentation. Very helpful. And a couple clarifying questions. You referenced electric carts. Will it only be electric, or will gas carts be allowed as well?
So we haven't decided that. Staff doesn't, our going in position for staff is that we wouldn't differentiate between the two. And I'm pretty sure state law doesn't differentiate between gas or electric. I don't see a reason why we would necessarily need to allow one and not allow the other.
Second question, in keeping with that, at least when I think about this proposal, I think of a golf cart. But when I was talking to somebody else about it the other day, they asked me about the other types of ATVs that are out there that may be able to meet some of those marking and lighting and braking, et cetera, requirements. Have we contemplated any of those in our discussions?
That's actually an entire can of worms that I don't want to necessarily get into a huge amount of detail tonight. All I will say was at state law, there are probably 5 or 6 different buckets that those types of vehicles can fall under. There's low speed vehicles. There's a personal transportation vehicle. These are all defined in state law. There's farm equipment and vehicles that are designated for the use for agriculture. Based on how your vehicle is classified with the horsepower and the equipment that it goes on, it falls in one of those buckets per state law and dictates whether you can be driving on a public street or not.
I could go everything like from a gator, which is not too dissimilar from a golf cart, to some of the more high-powered off-road vehicles that people are using today. That's where the question came from. The last question I've got for this evening is, I love where we have looked at the access points to this and the kinds of amenities that will be available to those folks living in this area. And I know it's not currently been mapped at all, but the prospect of getting people all the way to the grocery store at Mayfield and Arnold Mill. So right now, standard retail grocery is not included in our target area. Have we talked about possibility of extending?
That's not something that Sarah and I have talked about in great deal, but that's something we can look into. Remember that the code is a city code. The code isn't a crabapple code. So it is legal to drive them on any road, period, in the city, 25 miles an hour below. This study focused on the crabapple area specifically just because this is the area that we had the most potential and interaction with the state as far as state route crossings. But no, the grocery stores are a great, a logical destination, something that we should be thinking about in the future.
Thank you.
Quick question in regards to a sticker. So if they're allowed to drive a golf cart right now, if it's 25 miles an hour or under, and they're legally allowed to do that, in the future, if they don't have a sticker, will it be illegal?
That's something that we're going to talk about with PD. We haven't made that decision yet, and more information forthcoming.
Okay.
I would think we would likely want to have some kind of grace period just to give it time for the education and for the outreach to get out there and make sure people understand we are expecting them to swing by and sign a document and pay $15 and attach a sticker to their PTV. I wouldn't think we would be enforcing that on day one, but that's not a conversation we've had yet.
Okay. Dan?
Thank you for the presentation, but regarding the registration, not only the fact that people need to have the registration, but how are we going to monitor or make sure that they have all the requirements? You know,
So-
a lot of them have just the basic golf cart and they don't have all these other items on them.
So right now, to keep it as easy and simple as we can and resource low intense as far as the impact on staff, we're leaning towards a simple affidavit, basically someone paying their fee and signing a document stating that I'm aware of these requirements and my PTV meets that requirement.
And occasionally I'm assuming that the police will check some of these to make sure these vehicles are proper.
I'm not sure if we've not had that conversation with PD yet. Obviously, we're going to want to make sure people are safe and following the law, but it's just not something we are prepared to yet to dive into whether we have the capability to go out and inspect and require, for example, if we end up doing the registration process, likely either out of City Hall or out of the Public Safety Center. If we have it at the Public Safety Center, that would require people to bring their PTVs to the Public Safety Center, which is not necessarily where most of them are. So we're gonna be working through those details over the next couple of months.
I had a quick question. Oh, Rick, for you. Sorry. I love the plan. I live in one of the neighborhoods that is on this plan, and having that connectivity to downtown Crabapple is important for a lot of my neighbors. However, one of the biggest concerns that I've heard has been enforcing underage drivers. And I know you do have to have a license to drive a golf cart, but that is, as you know, in Crabapple, we see 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 14-year-olds driving golf carts. How do we have a plan to somehow enforce that with Milton Police, or how do we go about doing that?
And you'd be surprised, that's not unique to Crabapple. That's a pretty common problem for every city in Georgia that I'm aware that's doing this. It's one of those things that if you live in a golf course community or you live in an area where golf carts are prevalent, you see kids using them. Remember, if it's gated in a private street, we have no jurisdiction. We can't tell the 11-year-old not to drive their golf cart on the street. We're just talking about the public
In all
right
of
of
these
way.
neighborhoods, they're not gated.
So the issue of education, enforcement, and outreach to try and spread the word about what the city code says and what the state law allows for, I think are going to be two parts. The one is going to be that brochure that we have with our registration to make sure the parents know, make sure they're aware that this is what the law says. In addition to that, I know we've done a little bit of social media in the past with Greg, and I know that will probably continue.
We've also done some enforcement with the golf carts, mostly not well received, but we've done some.
Yes, you have.
They get a ticket or?
There have been tickets issued.
Okay.
Rick, did you have anything? Yep. Good. Any public comment, Tammy?
There are none on this item, sir.
Okay. Does that give you some direction, I think?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, good. Thanks, Rob. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mayor.
Okay, will the city clerk please sound the next agenda item?
Mayor, that next item is presentation of the local road safety plan draft action plan report. Ms. Sarah Leaders.
Good evening. I have a presentation tonight on another planning effort. This one's been running a little longer than the PTV plan, and so we're excited to see it come to a closure. And I've got Andrew Antweiler here tonight to help me present, but I'll start with our objective of tonight's presentation, review the mission and vision of this plan, talk about the progress and the process for the plan, review what we've seen so far on task 1 through 3, and then Andrew will talk about task 4, which is our draft action plan. Then we'll go through the next steps, talk about implementation, and then a summary. So this is a final review of the local road safety plan before we move forward with adoption, and we are looking at bringing this forward for adoption in August. We're going to present the draft action plan and are asking for some feedback on that plan, that portion of the local road safety plan. So to recap, our basis for the plan was the strategic plan goal, which was to implement transportation infrastructure that meets current needs, accounts for future growth, and allows residents to traverse Milton in a calm, safe, and efficient manner. And our mission is to proactively use the local road safety plan to make improvements that utilize engineering, education, and enforcement that respects Milton's rural heritage, enhances its quality of life, and makes our roads as safe as possible. So this one began in the fall of 2020. These are just some highlights from the progress on the plan to date. We've had lots of community engagement through surveys, council presentations, stakeholder meetings, public input meetings, and then we're here tonight with the final update on the action plan. The steps on the left are federal highways steps in a local road safety plan. And then on the right are the tasks that we associated with KCI to help us to get through the steps in the plan. And tonight we are at this task 4, which is our final documentation on the report, and we're preparing to move into implementing solutions. So recap from task 1 and 2, which looked at safety data and really identified 6 main areas that we wanted to focus improvements on. And these were, again, those 6 areas, emphasis areas: vehicle speed, distracted drivers, roadway and shoulder conditions, pedestrians, bicyclists and equestrians, intersection safety, and wildlife, specifically deer. In task 3, which we talked about in April of this year, we started looking at different strategies that fit under each of these categories and using the components of education, engineering, and enforcement. As far as community engagement on the plan, it's been our goal to provide opportunities to learn and share about the plan. And the most recent community engagement was in May of this year. We did our second round of the community survey. We had 8 questions on that and presented some of the strategies from task 3, got 329 responses, and incorporated those into the action plan that you'll see in the next few slides. We've also made updates to the project webpage throughout the process. And now I'll let Andrew highlight a few of these survey results that again feed into the action plan.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So from the most recent survey, we wanted to highlight 2 of the responses. The first one relates to, we presented the community with 9 of the engineering countermeasures, the ones that are a little bit newer to the community. And that feedback resulted in showing you on the screen the top four that the community showed the most interest in pursuing. They did support all of the 9 presented. And we've spoke about these, as Sarah said, in April. We also asked the community regarding the 10 educational campaigns, which of those campaigns they would like to see implemented with a higher priority. And you'll notice that the community was very interested in seeing rules of the road for roundabouts as their top interest, as well as others related to bicycles, vehicles interacting with bicycles, and speed-related safety. So on to the action plan. Really, we took, and from the community engagement, we kind of tweaked our strategies. We then took that information and helped us develop an implementation plan for the city. So the action plan includes major priorities, which we'll speak about in just a moment. We then recommended some phased implementation for the educational campaigns and the engineering countermeasures. And then to help this plan as it's being implemented, we recommend to monitor and evaluate the progress. Here are the 6 major priorities we've identified. The first one is to perform these educational campaigns with different topics each quarter of the year, and they can be rotated throughout the year. We also recommend to apply for implementation grant funds from the Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is a discretionary federal grant opportunity. We recommend performing planning and study efforts to identify projects that can incorporate these engineering safety countermeasures. Once those are identified, then you can implement and construct those engineering safety countermeasure projects in phases. The city is in a great position to utilize the T-SPLOST funding to implement these safety improvements. And we also want to keep in mind that safety enhancements can be made in the 2 focus areas. That included PTVs as well as the multimodal gravel roads. So based on the input from the survey, we broke the 10 engineering countermeasures into 2 phases, recommending the city focus first on 5 of these. And as those are developed and information shared with the public, they can move along into 5 additional campaigns. And in terms of the engineering countermeasures, so there's one important plan distinction. Typically, when a comprehensive transportation plan is presented or prepared for a city, it has a list of projects. Well, this plan is different in that specific projects are not identified. This plan really identifies a comprehensive menu of strategies or tools in the toolbox. So the idea is to implement these improvements. There's 4 typical ways, and they're listed here on the screen. One is to incorporate a safety countermeasure into a routine maintenance project. So for instance, that could be when the city goes to resurface a street, they decide, hey, we want to install the pavement safety edge design along this corridor, and so it gets built as part of that project. A second opportunity to implement these would be as a standalone project. It could be to upgrade the signage at an intersection. It could be to install a roundabout. So that's an example of a standalone project. The third way to implement would be to perform a street corridor or an intersection study, review the safety countermeasures identified in the plan, and then design and build that recommendation that is most applicable. And the fourth typical way could be a system-wide improvement. This might be, for example, to install raised pavement markers on all of your collector streets. So that's therefore a citywide improvement that could be done. And there were 40 engineering countermeasures. We presented these last time. We then developed Table 4 in the report, provide some evaluation considerations. And those considerations helped us to break these engineering countermeasures into 3 potential phases, as well as identify those that we felt had higher priority And so we had 16 projects or countermeasures that we felt were a higher priority for the city out of the 40. And we also identified that 14 of these countermeasures fell into a phase 1 recommendation. So these items could potentially be implemented in the next 15 months. Many of them could be. Because they're easy to identify, they're lower cost. Some of the projects or countermeasures that would require further study, further community input, design, and a higher cost really could fall more into a phase 2 or phase 3, which might be implemented in the 1 to 4 year timeframe. And this is the last slide to present on the action plan. I mentioned the highest priority projects. This lists the 16 identified countermeasures, and kind of in the gray color, we've denoted some of these fall into that phase 1 strategy or project. So some of these projects are a little easier to do and implement, and some of them would fall more into the stage or phase 2, timeline, where they may need some design or additional, funding and development before they're implemented. With that, I'll turn it back to Sarah.
This one just highlights the next steps in the process. So tonight we have the Task 4 action plan. We'll be looking for adoption in August. Then we're going to look to set a Vision Zero goal. And that's coming up with an eventual goal of 0 roadway fatalities and serious injuries. And that is actually one of the requirements for this implementation funding, which is that Safe Streets for All is coming up with a goal to try to get to 0 on those, again, fatalities and serious injury accidents. Then we're going to look for implementation funding. We do have some projects that have started that I'll highlight on the next slide, as well as future funding and the again, that federal grant that could provide a significant amount of funding to make some progress on this action plan, and then move into actually implementing the solutions. So this slide shows kind of what this action plan is going to look like specifically in the city. So what I did here was took some projects that are underway, that we're starting, that we're getting ready to start, that really demonstrate what this action plan is about. So for vehicle speeds, our number 1 priority there is looking at speed limit evaluations. And we've started that underway. We did a phase 1 count just before school got out. So we're looking to move forward with that. For the distracted driving, as well as vehicle speeds, that is how our police department uses intelligence-led traffic enforcement and education. They use data to help with those enforcement efforts related to distracted driving as well as vehicle speeds. For roadway and shoulder condition emphasis area, I'll show you on the next slide what we have done with some Georgia DOT safety action plan grant money, and how that's a success story on safety improvements and how we plan to expand that. For the pedestrian and bicycle and equestrian, an example of that kind of project that we're working on are some of these mid-block crossings for Crabapple Road, Mayfield Road, and Bethany Bend. Intersection safety, we have some roundabout projects in design. As we move forward with our next transportation plan, I'm sure we'll identify other intersections for different types of improvements, but that's what implementation for intersections is going to look like. And the wildlife deer emphasis area, that's looking at some planned messaging to raise awareness about wildlife. This was the Georgia DOT Safety Action Plan I mentioned. We actually received some grant funding to match some city funds that we were already in the works with roadway striping as we repaved. We purchased some radar signs, some roundabout ahead warning signs that are in the process of going up on Hopewell Road. We've got some curb warning flashing signs. The roadway striping, like I mentioned, that was part of the paving, we're able to get matching funds from the state on, as well as over 3,700 raised pavement markers on the highlighted streets shown on this map. So the federal funding opportunity that's coming up, this is communities that have adopted a local road safety plan, which we anticipate to have before the grant application, that have an action plan can apply for this funding. And so we feel like we're in a good position with just getting through this plan to apply for that implementation funds. And our recommended project, which will still work out the street locations, but we're looking at adding safety enhancements and speed reduction measures from the safety edge, the picture you see on the right, that's the little bit wider shoulder with the angle on it to reduce run off the road recovery. We could look at some pavement markings as part of that paving, narrowing lanes, and other traffic calming measures. So what we still need to do is determine the exact locations we're going to apply for this at, coordinate it with our repaving program, and then put together an estimate to get this application ready for mid-September. And as Andrew mentioned, as solutions are implemented, it is important to monitor and evaluate how we're moving forward with this action plan. And it's one of the best ways to ensure it's a living document. So in summary, we've reviewed what the plan has together, what we're looking at for implementation, what we've started moving forward with, and wanted to get if there's any comments on the educational campaign phasing, the highest priority projects that Andrew went through, and like I said, what we're beginning to implement or future implementation that you'd like us to consider as part of the plan. And a couple summary points is that we have engaged the citizens every step of the way so they can be involved and informed of what's happening with this plan. And it has been a working document, and it should be viewed as a living document that can be updated to reflect our changing local needs and priorities. With that, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Sarah, could you talk a little bit about the speed limit reduction or the zones and what we're actually doing and what's the goal and timeline? What can we expect? Because I know that's been a concern over the years, and I know there's some complications because of the state highways and whatever, but can you kind of take us through, because I know that's on phase 1 priority. Can you talk about what we're actually doing to accomplish that and what it will look like or what your goal is?
So we, just before, like I said, before school got out, where we could have those higher volume counts during the school year, we did counts on, I believe, 10 different roads to get volume, speeds, and KCI helped us collect those. We wanted to get the rest of the plan wrapped up before we started the engineering studies of those, but that's the thought with phase 1 is we take the counts that we've collected and we see what information that DOT will work with us on and what information we need to provide them to account for certain categories. We've had conversations. Andrew can talk to some of the conversations with DOT he's had about the local roads that are, that they do regulate the speed limit on, but that there's becoming a little more flexibility in reviewing what locals put together versus so getting a speed limit reduction on a state route is going to be looked at in much more detail because it is on the state route system, but there is some more flexibility being granted for these local roads that we're looking at speed limits on.
So on like a local road, instead of it being 45, where it's not a state route, you'll do the study. We've done the study. We'll look at the volume counts. We'll look at the speed. And part of this is taking a look at the safety and whether you'll come forward if there's a recommendation and we have the ability to implement reducing of speed, different streets.
Right. And there's actually several other components that we've understood through this evaluation program that the state will look at. And it's the presence of bicycles and pedestrians. It's if there's substandard curves, vertical or horizontal curves that are issues, the number of driveways on roadway, sometimes the different type of vehicle usage, if there's a lot of vehicles that pull trailers or, different classification of vehicles too. So all those things will factor into that discussion with DOT. And that's where we wanted to take phase one and see what additional things we need to provide to justify some of those other parameters that we would like to be considered.
Okay, just one last question. So when we're doing local streets, do we still need to engage GDOT? That's part of any change of any type of speed limit requires that formal process and work.
For radar enforceable speed limits.
Which we want to have if we change the speed limit. We want the ability to actually enforce the speed limits.
Dan?
Sarah, one of my concerns is the distracted driving. I mean, I'm sure we all, every time you turn around, it's somebody's looking down and not looking at the road. Is there anything different than Milton can do other than, I know the state has a certain set of rules that we have to follow, but are we allowed to do more than that? Or is there something, I mean, I don't really know what the answer is, but it certainly seems like it's getting worse and not better as far as people looking down at their phones and being distracted.
So from a engineering side, the one thing we didn't necessarily classify it as that type of strategy, but the center line rumble strips, not doing those on the white edge line because of the on-road cyclists, but as a measure to catch someone that might be distracted and start to edge over that center line. That's the only engineering component related to distracted driving. And Chief Austin is here tonight. He may have some input on the police side if there's anything creative or that they've looked at and tried related to distracted driving.
Yeah, we've done and we continue to do sort of stings on this particular behavior because we do understand that it is very dangerous. So we have officers actually out targeting for that. As a matter of fact, they did one just a little while ago. That they caught several people were able to do some public education as well as some enforcement. They also caught people that were driving with suspended licenses and no insurance and other problems as well. So we'll continue to do that as we ramp up our traffic team. Full-time, we have a supervisor and 2 officers with that, and we have some other officers that are very active in traffic. Of course, all of our officers are responsible for traffic safety, but we pull them in and we get volunteers as well to go out and target those types of offenses.
Do we track when somebody's given a warning? Because I know there was a lot of this discussion about, well, you'll just get a warning, so don't worry about it. I mean,
We do. We keep tabs of who we contact. An officer puts it in the computer and it just stays as a warning, but it does inform us if they've been educated before.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And just to add to that, we share information with other local agencies as well. So if someone got stopped in Alpharetta for it and they're on our same system, then we'll be able to understand that an Alpharetta officer will want them as well. So it works well for all of the local agencies.
Have you seen any improvement at all, or is it just me that thinks like it's getting worse, or is it?
It's every time we go out, we have no issues trying to find people to stop. It's just prevalent, as you stated. I think we just continue to provide the education about how dangerous it is and provide the enforcement. It's really something that is an issue.
We do something. I mean, I know it's not just young people, so doing something in schools is important, but how do we get this? It seems like it's a lot of adults that are doing the same thing. It's not just younger drivers.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's sort of human nature, and it does cause a lot of our accidents. I just sat through a briefing that we have regularly, and we talked about our accidents, and most of them are rear-end collisions, and a lot of those suspected are people that are distracted, and they just tap the car in front of them. It really drives our accident rates up, and it makes it look a lot more unsafe than it is, really, because these are very avoidable crashes.
Thank you.
Sure. Paul?
Chief, while you're at the podium, I think you said it just real quickly. I didn't quite catch it. Where are we in our current staffing? I guess overall, and then I think there was a plan to add a couple officers specifically for speed monitoring.
Right. We have 2 officers assigned full-time to traffic. They have a supervisor who's also active in traffic enforcement, so he's actually out in the field as well. We have other officers that want to be on the team, so they often volunteer for special assignments for traffic. We do traffic overtime. And every officer that's out on the road is responsible for traffic safety.
Where are we in our current staffing? Are we at full staff these days?
We just brought in a new officer today, and if I recall correctly, we still have 4 openings to fill, and we have some prospects for those.
Great.
Thank you. Anything else? We have public comment?
We do not, sir.
I just want to say quickly, thank you. I'm seeing a difference in my area of Milton because there's more visibility of the cars and I think they're stopping people. So thank you very much for that.
Sure, good to know. And I just want to make one more comment. Just this past weekend, we had a sort of a reboot of our teen driving program. You mentioned the younger drivers and changing those behaviors. We had 13 or 14 of our younger residents that came to us, some through the court, some voluntarily, that took our course. All students passed the written exam at the end, and our officers were able to engage them, talk to them so that they could sort of have that one-on-one. They could really talk to them and let them know how dangerous some of these behaviors are. That's a really good conversation, and we look forward to this program continuing on.
Thanks, Chief. Oh, Paul.
Chief, sorry, one more thing. I think the last time you were at the podium, I challenged you with being consistently inconsistent, and I would also like to say thanks. I'm seeing officers in different places more often, which I think is fantastic.
Good to know.
You're not
Thank you for that.
saying, oh, I'm entering that one area where I know there's always an officer monitoring, that they are consistently inconsistent now, which is great.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. Yep. Would the city clerk please say on the next agenda item?
Mayor, that next item is discussion of lot width in AG1, community development. Mr. Michael Cardeman.
This your first time presenting, Michael?
Big project, yes.
All good.
Oh no, tough crowd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present a land use project outlined in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Short-Term Work Program. This project is to perform due diligence to update AG1 zoning district to increase lot width from 100 feet to 150 feet. During the Comp Plan Advisory Committee meetings, including citizen input, this project was outlined as a year 1 priority. Explore increasing lot width requirement in AG1 zoning district from 100 feet to 150 feet. Section 64(1). The definition of minimum lot width means the least dimension required along the building line specified for each district parallel to the lot frontage and measured between side lot lines. Section 64(416)(f). Staff is proposing minimum lot width shall be 150 feet. Staff believes increasing the lot width requirement from 100 to 150 feet will reduce the appearance of density, even though the lots will not increase in size, create more separation between homes, lowering the number of narrow lots, and overall will create a more rural theme in the city of Milton. Staff is proposing cul-de-sac minimum lot width shall be 100 feet, and I'll expand more on this on the following slide. First, take your attention to the cul-de-sac lots on the left. Lot frontage is defined at the street, which requires 35 feet. And the building line keeps moving back on the lot until you get to 100 feet of lot width between 2 property lines. As you can see from the cul-de-sac lots, the house placement is right at the 100 feet lot width building line, which in fact is past the 60-foot front setback requirement. Staff did not want to require 150 feet of lot width for cul-de-sac lots. 150 feet would push the houses too far back, and this would also impact the tree canopy in the rear of the properties. The 100 feet lot width requirement for cul-de-sacs lots is proposed to stay at 100 feet. Now, please take your attention to the rectangle lots. These lots already have 100 feet of lot width at the street. Therefore, the building line starts at the 60-foot front setback requirement. The rectangle lot is a good example to see the buildable area width. The lot width is 100 feet. subtracting 2 side setbacks at 25 feet apiece, and that leaves you with a buildable area width of 50 feet. For rectangle lots, the 100 feet lot width requirement is proposed to increase to 150 feet. This is an example of a platted subdivision in the city where majority of the lots are at 100 feet in lot width. As you can see from the lot layout on the right, the house is a tight fit and doesn't allow a wider buildable area. The narrow lot requires the garage to be detached and located behind the house. The driveway also has to be right against the property line for access, creating less privacy for the homeowner and the neighbor. When more driveway is needed for a detached garage in the back, it also takes up a large amount of impervious surface. Lots on public streets can have a maximum of 20% impervious, while lots on private streets can have a maximum of 25% impervious. Not only does using more impervious surface for a long driveway shrink the overall buildable footprint for the home, it also precludes for future additions such as decks, porches, or pools down the road. This is an example of another platted subdivision in the city, and it shows narrow and wide lots across the street from each other. Keep in mind, all the lots are 1 acre in size, but you can see the lots on the south side of the street with 150 feet of lot width have a wider, more practical buildable area, and the lots on the north side of the street with 100 feet of lot width. Here's an aerial of the existing street, and you can see how much more separation the homes on the south side of the street have versus the north side. The north side of the street appears much denser, but again, remember, these are all 1 acre in size. Staff thought it would be a good idea to provide elevation examples. Here is an example of an elevation of a house with 50 feet of width, which is the maximum buildable area width for a lot with 100 feet in lot width. The house has a tighter fit, smaller overall buildable area, and doesn't have enough room for a side entry garage. Here is an elevation of a house with a width of 100 feet, which is a maximum buildable area width for a lot with 150 feet in lot width area. As you can see from the elevation, this house has a wider footprint, allows for a side entry garage, front porch, exposed wood beams, that true farmhouse architectural style that really flourishes on a wider, less restrictive lot. The Planning Commission recommended cul-de-sac lots stay at 100 feet lot width to preserve the tree canopy in the rear of cul-de-sac lots at their June 22nd, 2022 meeting. Minor and major subdivisions. Staff welcomes Mayor and Council's input if there should be universal restrictions for AG1 zoning, or whether there should be separated for minor subdivisions or major subdivisions. A minor subdivision is a subdivision of no more than 3 lots, or if any number of single-family residential lots, provided are each a minimum of 3 acres or more in size. A major subdivision is a subdivision that does not qualify as a minor subdivision, 4 or more lots, curb and gutter, road dedication, 1 lot dedicated for stormwater management, and the lots are going to be less than 3 acres in size. Here's a summary of the project plan to date. Initiation, data gathering was completed in April. In June, the project planning was complete. Project planning included completing the development scope, communication plan, risk matrix, risk mitigation, determine stakeholders, and presenting to Planning Commission, which took place on June 22nd. In July, staff is currently in the execution phase, where we made our final staff recommendation for lot width requirement AG1 zoning, and we are awaiting input from Mayor and Council this evening. And lastly, the adoption cycle, and that'll take place from August through December of this year. Overall, here's a summary of what staff has presented before you. Section 64416F, staff is proposing minimum lot width shall be 150 feet, and staff is proposing cul-de-sac minimum lot width shall remain at 100 feet. During the Comp Plan Advisory Committee meetings, including citizen input, this project was outlined as a year one priority, and we believe this is a good step forward of accomplishing that goal. Staff looks forward to input and any questions for staff.
Any questions? Do we have any public comment?
We do, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to invite Scott Reese to the podium.
You should sit up on the front row.
I should
Yeah.
have.
Sure.
I'm sorry that I took up some of your valuable time walking up. I'll do better. Mayor and Council, I'm Scott Reese, Rumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia 30004. So, have given this a good bit of thought. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, when we really encountered the increase in the house sizes that are typical in Milton, we no longer designed the standard subdivision lot with less than 150 feet. A side entry garage will require, we think, a minimum of a 30-foot turnaround for ingress egress into the to the garage. So if you've got a 150-foot lot with 25-foot side setbacks and the garage side being 30 feet, you've already reduced your buildable area to 95 feet. And the houses that we have seen come through in all of the major subdivisions are much wider than the 50 feet minimum that would be on these parallel sided lots. I think the cul-de-sac is, the staff is absolutely correct in holding that at the sliding. Those 95% of those cul-de-sac lots are radial, meaning they enlarge as they go back, the width. I don't think anyone's looking to push houses into the rear yards further to impact neighbors more so than where we're at. The major subdivisions, I think that we're not impeding any personal property rights for the existing property owners in the city. There's just not a demand for 50-foot wide houses with front entry garages. You're basically looking at, a 28-foot wide livable or usable space in the house. It's just not what we run into. So I think we're good there. What I do have a bit of a problem with is the one size fits all. And the minor subdivisions, we still run across someone with maybe a special needs person or an elderly relative, and they're going to cut out an acre or 2 acres out of their property for lack of a better term, a cottage. So I don't know, and these lots typically will not be close to the street. They're typically in the back, rear loaded, so it doesn't aesthetically change. I know they were talking about the aesthetics or the look. With the width of these houses, they're going to fill the building space. So that's, it sounds good, but aesthetically, we're still going to have, they're going to build building line to building line. So if it's the width, you're still going to have the 25 and the 30s on the sides. You're just going to get bigger houses. But the minor subdivision plat, being the key is that you can only create 3 lots through the minor plat process as if those lots are less than 3 acres. And you're precluded from re-subdividing under that rule. So it's not a domino effect of where, well, I'm going to cut out 3 lots and then come back 3 years later and do it again and again. That's on the face of the minor subdivision plat. There's a statement that says any lot thus created cannot be re-subdivided through this ordinance. So it's, to me, do you stamp upon the needs of a few for the desires of the many? So if there is any time that anyone would need a 100-foot wide lot in a minor subdivision plat, I think we should leave that option on the table. So synopsis: major subdivisions, meaning all subdivisions of 1 acre lots, more than 3 parcels. Non-cul-de-sac lots would increase from 100 to 150. On the minor subdivision, either stay where it is or at the most increase it from 100 to 125. But a doubling of that buildable area, the 100 feet minus the 25 on each side, from 50 to 100 seems to be a little bit of a bridge too far, in my opinion. So thank you for your consideration. So my recommendation is major subdivision, increase, exempt cul-de-sac lots, and for minor subdivisions, keep it where it's at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Quick question, Steve, on Mr. Reese's example, can a variance be applied on something like this, on lot width? Or you want to wait on Ken on that?
As long as it doesn't affect density, correct?
Lot width is not one of the band's requests, so it'd be lot size and the frontage on the street, but not lot width. You could technically ask for that variance.
That's it. Oh, you did? Okay. Any other questions for Scott?
Michael, you were all pro. I expect to see you on the nightly news. Just knock one of those anchors out of the way.
Appreciate it, girl. Thank you.
Steve, do you need any direction from us on this, on anything? Or are you good?
Do you have any feelings on the minor plats?
I can go either way personally.
We could bring this back to you when we bring it back as the text amendment. Which is it on for the next meeting?
It'll
the
come
25th?
back to you. It'll go to planning commission and then back to you all.
And maybe we can give some examples of some minor plats when we.
I need
vote on
to digest what Scott said. I don't really.
That's good feedback. Yeah. So examples of what minor plats could look like and how those how it could look with the 100 versus the 150 setback at the building line.
Sure.
Just a comment, and maybe you can respond, Steve. We still have the requirement, of the maximum amount of impervious surface, which includes the construction of the physical structure of the home, to deal with as well. Does that also help serve where staff is trying to go with this, or are we? I don't know. Does that get compromised?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, in the example that Michael had up there, that was a real life example. And what we're seeing is, as he said, there's 20% max on private roads, 20 on public, 25 on private, correct?
Right.
What we're seeing in some of these developments is they're maxing out their impervious surface.
Yeah.
And then staff and then ultimately the BZA are left to deal with the repercussions of that when people don't understand why they can't put a deck or a pool or some other impervious surface that may impact them. So I see the benefit, certainly see the benefit there. I don't know if that is the question you're asking me.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going, is we have those considerations in place as well. Michael, in your analysis, it's a good one to say, but this kind of goes back to a pet peeve of mine anyway, which is I think that it might warrant at some point in our future a look at the percentage allowable of impervious surface on the lots that are out there today across the board, not just minor versus major lots. Because we have so much demand where people are trying to put too much stuff. If you really want a pool and a pool house and a 3-car garage and all the things that come along with that, you may have to buy an acre and a half. Can't put it on an acre. And so one of the ways to, in my mind, to help regulate that is dealing with the allowable impervious surface. And I think it might warrant a consideration as we measure this again too. Lot width and impervious surface may be a part of the equation rather than just lot width without leaving the impervious surface for another day. I think we should marry those two thoughts, those two ideas, and ultimately take a more comprehensive look at it. Food for thought.
Thanks, Paul. Anything else? All right. Thanks, Michael. Good job.
Thank you very much.
All right, Tammy, you'll please sound the final item.
Mayor, the final item is discussion of naming the 5-acre city park with a pond on Mayfield Road. Our communications director, Mr. Greg Botello.
Just disappeared. There it goes. And my friend Tom McElveen is here for lots of support. This needs to open up. Good time. So this hopefully, not only the last thing, but this should look familiar because we have gone through this process before for the Milton City Park and Preserve. So I am very intentionally, you'll see even this slide is purposely intentional with a few small tweaks because there's a different picture and a different name of a park, different location. But the idea tonight is in general, is to give a public park with a pond on Mayfield Road a name that resonates with visitors while reflecting the city's values and identity. So we're almost there through this process. One is to create a process where you got citizens and stakeholders input. We definitely had that. We built energy and excitement and value for this property. I think we have the feedback kind of suggests that as well. We shared with you a few weeks ago what we think are some contenders to name the space, and then this kind of leads the next steps in the process for what we're going to do to name this property as a whole. Our thought here is tonight we won't have votes because you can't have votes at work sessions, but you can raise hands and give us kind of direction on a few things, and I'll lead you through that process. So just some general background so people know. 2020, Taylor Morrison, which developed the Lakeside of Crabapple subdivision, created this park and which had a pond and trails and also some other things, and handed it over to the city, which we very much appreciated. And in the last few weeks, we've got some great feedback from Milton Historical Society. And then in June 9th and 10th, we launched the kind of public naming campaign to solicit names. We closed the public input phase, and we kind of shared you some names. We got some feedback of some other, or on the existing names, some other ones. And today, hopefully, we're trying to narrow the finalists. If we do it the same process as last time, you can narrow the finalists to between 2 to 6 or whatever you decide. And we can have a online vote as early as tomorrow, or most likely on Wednesday. The idea is that by late July, we'll have an official name for this. And very soon after that, we will move on to the next one. So, which is, again, we're trying to name about 8 parks or spaces in the next 2 years, which is a task where we're excited for it. So far we've had 126 names submitted, which considering we had about just over 200 for Milton City Park and Preserve, and this is lower profile, I think that's a really good response. Most of them had similar themes. I kind of listed some words that were repeated multiple times. Park is the main one. Pond was a bunch of times. You'll see, you can see right there that there's some names and that kind of stood out more than others. So only 7 names were mentioned more than once, meaning most were one of a kind. I like to show this slide. You don't have to read all of them, but there's some. If you want to go to Tons of Fun Park, you have the opportunity to put that there. Or also, what was the Milton Head Park? So Hilton Head. Tom had to tip me off that that's what it was because I wasn't smart enough to figure that out. Or Chipmunk Heaven. So those are just, there's believe it all or not, for all these names, people had really thoughtful responses. They actually explained what they wanted. Someone wants to plant morning glories there, which I think sounds nice. I'm not sure what they want to do at Ponderosa, but maybe have some steaks, but still. But those, I actually love the creativity. And I think it makes it fun. And I always just like to share them too, because everyone has heard and things like that. So this one, especially even more so now, those we solicited some suggestions from the Milton Historic Society. They did contribute previously. The three names they had, one was Founders Park. That was to name it, to have a little trail where they can honor different people from the Cherokees, the pioneers, to more recent individuals, officials along a trail. Another one is to name it after the Smith family Smith family. We'll discuss that later because that came up again. Rainwater Park. So there's 7 generations of the Rainwater family, several of whom are buried in Milton, who made their mark here in the area since the mid 1800s. I will say I just checked about an hour ago. There was a slave census. There was a Rainwater that did have some slaves in 1860 in Milton. So just to consider. That being said, these are and I'm gonna lead you through the feedback process. These are kind of some of the names that kind of came up originally. I also would open up if there's another name that you want on this final online vote. The first is, and I want your feedback to say, so either Mayfield Park or Mayfield Pond Park. If you raise your hand, if you generally want that as a name that you'd be comfortable with, that could be on the final ballot. So are you comfortable with? So that being said, so we have some names. Any preference between Mayfield Park or Mayfield Pond Park?
Mayfield Park.
Mayfield Park.
Okay, that's fine.
It's simple.
It's easier to say.
That's so then that makes it easy. Another name it's disappeared. Go back. Sorry. Is Serenity Park. This is more of a park with evokes a feeling. That was one of the names that 3 people mentioned. If there's support for that to put on the ballot, let me know. Yes.
By
no.
the road.
What's that?
By the road.
It's a peaceful oasis in the middle of crap.
God.
It's always.
I like some tie back to the history of the land or the area or the time in Milton. So
That's fine.
anything that ties back to the history is what I would support.
Sure. That's so long for Serenity Park, but that's okay.
So long,
You can be
Serenity.
serene there
Middle
if you
of
want to, but
town.
you just don't have to name it that. This is the one. So the Smith family, which has come up as a background, they purchased the property in 1976. At some point, they sold it to developer, but they were very active in Milton. So the question is, generally, ballpark, would people be interested in having something with the Smith family as a name? Raise your hand if you would like that to be a contender. Like Smith Pond Park or the park. And I'm going to talk a little bit.
Is there a way to make Mayfield and Smith? Is there a way to?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do anything we want. So we could do Smith Mayfield Park. So we could also have, I do have, there's one of the park at Smith Pond. It did want to point out that would mean the park is in the pond, but it's the park
I don't
at
want
the
to
pond.
make it, not make sense, but
Yes,
I just didn't know that you.
Yes, no, so this is what this is for. This is just basically for, so frankly, we could have variations. You could have Mayfield Park, you could have Mayfield Smith Park if you wanted to. You could have the Smith Pond at Mayfield Park.
Could we have Mayfield Park, but with a plaque that
Yes.
references the Smith family? Or
I think that's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
So if there's, and the thing is in this, if there's a consensus there,
I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
well, you can't officially vote.
Okay.
If that is the name,
Give you some direction.
you can give me direction. If there's consensus for the Mayfield Park and have some honoring of the family there.
Yeah.
And Tom, am I speaking under turn? That's something that we could basically, with the city staff's direction, just go from here.
Have you taken rainwater off the list based on?
Well,
your-
no, that is also contender too. So,
Well, I think
I like the rainwater historical, Milton again.
so there's 7 generations of the Rainwater family, so at least to the 1800s. Keeps them disappearing. So several of them are buried in Milton. They're a very active family. We don't necessarily know if they owned that property per se. They were just active in the general area. There was a woman named, and this is again, the only copy of the old Milton County slave census from 1860 has a woman named Hannah Ramwater. I'm not sure if they're related, had 9 slaves. Just to keep in mind. But beyond that, they've been active and they continue to be active in the, as far as I know, in the Milton history.
Do we know when, are there any rainwaters still living today?
If Jeff left, Jeff, I would ask Milton Historical Society. 7 generations, I would gotta imagine. They did give me that there were 7 generations of rainwaters, and if they couldn't have been. I don't know. I don't have to do math, but I would imagine that it's pretty prolific. So.
But we know for sure the Mayfields owned that land and sold it. And
The Mayfields,
or the Smiths. I'm sorry.
Yes,
the
that's
Smiths.
for sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even though so that's they were definitely, and they're still active in this community too. So, so there's 2 options. Would people want the rainwater park as an option for an online vote, or would you prefer to have a Mayfield Park with some sort of honoring?
I'm kind of to the former, but
I like the idea of Mayfield Park. It's just,
They know where it is.
I'm fine with that. Tom, you good with that? Not that Tom Tom is the ultimate decider. Just kidding. But I think
council, you all have any issues with that?
No.
Or are you good
it
with
would.
that? Okay.
It would. I mean, and also too that if we, whether you name the pond or whether you have some sort of honoring of the Smith family there, I think that would be.
I mean, the Milton Historical Society has those plaques, so maybe they could probably do a rainwater and a Smith. They could probably do a whole maybe history.
Yeah.
thing.
I would imagine that.
Smith Pond and Rainwater Trail.
And throw Palmora in the Palmora.
Actually, yes. So I think that would be because the rainwater, in terms of the founders and pioneers, I bet the rainwaters would be part of that. And frankly, the Smith family it's more recent history, so they are a connection to that land as well. So that kind of ties together a bunch of the historical society stuff.
They can work with you all and get it done.
I'm all good with that. So that makes it a lot easier for me.
That was actually.
So I kind of suspected.
Save the day right there.
So the next ones will. It's like kind of so we're going to kind of skip some of these things. It's going to be a little faster than this, but we have several properties that are kind of having transformations right now. One is the first one we'd like to focus on next. You can kind of stay tuned for this. Is the Cox Road Athletic Complex. Tom can tell you about the lots of exciting things happening there. After that will probably be the Birmingham at Freeman Mill Green Space, which is also having a lot of things. So we're trying to time these things. Kind of the Mayfield Park, which I can call it now. It's kind of catching up with stuff, but we had that in our wheelhouse for a while. But we kind of want to keep this momentum going, and frankly, the citizens are really engaged. So,
Is there a reason we've not taken any action on the Lackey Road?
we're basically not necessarily. We basically are doing one by one to get each of them like a month and a half moment in the sun, and all these other ones. We kind of did the Mayfield Park first because I guess it was open first, or more just math wise, and then but then Cox Road and Birmingham and Freemill, there's something happening there.
Yeah.
That makes it easier to build excitement when something. So I think, I'm not sure what the next one after Birmingham Freemill, but there's no reason, unless there's some sort of major development happening at Lackey in the next 2 years. Not that we know of. Yeah, it could be next after that, but it's in the pipeline for sure. Exactly. Well, thank you very much.
Greg.
That was
Thanks,
easy.
Tom.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything? All right, that will conclude our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your references.